Good morning. It is Monday, May the 12th, and this is Jack Blanchard, Playbook's managing editor and author.
Good morning. I'm Dasha Burns, chief Playbook correspondent, and this is the Playbook Podcast.
It is, and as you can hear, as of today, this podcast that you already know and love is getting a little bit of a makeover with myself and Dasha. You might hear some new sounds, you might see some new artwork, you're going to hear a lot of us. For those of you who don't know us yet, we'll tell you a little bit more about ourselves at the end of the podcast, but fear not, it is basically still the same one-stop shop for everything you need to know to start your day every morning. Dasha and I are going to dig into the biggest stories of the day and get you some insidery scoops too on what's going on in DC and all around the world. Should we get on with it, Dasha?
Let's do it.
Because, oh my God, there is so much happening this morning and this
week.
Boy. This is like the craziest weekend I've seen of news in ages. I was sitting around on Sunday afternoon watching
I'm already
the news
tired.
unfurl. Right. And Dasha, you're not in your normal hot seat either. Have you been away this weekend?
I have been at the wedding of my brother-in-law, Matt, and his beautiful bride, Tatiana. It was a beautiful celebration, and a lot of news happened while they were saying their nuptials.
Were you checking your phone all the way through the wedding reception? Be honest.
Don't tell my family. I'm sorry, they might be listening to this, but I may have looked a couple of times.
Okay, check out all this. This morning, Monday morning, Donald Trump is heading off on the first overseas tour of his second term. He is flying to the Middle East, to Saudi Arabia. He's going on to Qatar and Abu Dhabi. While he's doing this, Dasha, some of the biggest deals of his presidency are absolutely critical moments, right? Just go through the stuff that's happening this week. We've got new details this morning about this trade agreement with China that were being finalized over the weekend in Switzerland. Then there's this massive showdown happening this week over Ukraine. Don't forget, Donald Trump promised to end that on day one. We've seen this back and forth diplomacy all weekend. Zelenskyy saying he wants to meet Putin in Turkey on Thursday. And we've got progress happening in the Middle East as well, Dasha, with Steve Witkoff, the US Special Envoy to the Middle East, cutting a deal with Hamas over the release of the last American hostage in Gaza. Incredible.
Right, and don't forget that Bibi's Gaza deadline is looming too. Right. Plus, we have the GOP trying to come together with a deal over tax and spending cuts, Medicaid cuts plan released Sunday evening, final tax plan released Monday afternoon, and we have Trump trying to force Big Pharma to cut its prices with an executive order this morning. And we have this insane possible deal over the Qatari plane. But Qatar has said that report is inaccurate. So we're in store for a lot this week.
Can we start with this jet plane story? Because I've seen some jaw-dropping stories in my time. I've been a journalist for quite a long time now. This one really hit the bar for an oh my goodness moment. This is ABC News broke the story over the weekend that Donald Trump allegedly was going to be gifted essentially a jumbo jet by Qatar to fly around in. I know you've been reporting this out today, Dasha. Just give listeners the latest on what is going on with this crazy story.
So here's the deal. Trump is like, I'm getting this plane. This is a great deal for me and for everybody. They're giving it to us for free. Why would anybody have a problem with this? Of course, there are a lot of laws and rules and stipulations like the emoluments clause, et cetera, congressional approval that would need to be a part of this that do create some problems for him. And the Qatari government is saying, we got a statement from them saying that the reports that a jet is being gifted by Qatar to the United States government during the upcoming visit of President Trump are inaccurate. They're basically saying, and the White House has backed this up, that this gift is not going to happen this week while he is in the Middle East. But they didn't say it's not going to happen at all. They're saying that they're reviewing it with respective legal departments and no decision has been made. So he very well could be flying around in this thing. It's just not happening this week.
Here's Donald Trump on Truth Social last night at 8:42 p.m. saying, so the fact that the Defense Department is getting a gift free of charge of a 747 aircraft to replace the 40-year-old Air Force One temporarily in a very public and transparent transaction so bothers the crooked Democrats that they insist we pay top dollar for the plane. Anybody can do that. The Dems are world-class losers, he said. So that is Donald Trump confirming that there is a gift coming from the Qatari government
and he's into
a shiny jumbo jet. Now, there's a big elephant in the room in this, which is that the original ABC News report on this on Sunday morning said the plan was that Donald Trump was going to keep this plane after the presidency. It was going to be gifted to his presidential library, and somehow he would continue to fly around in it after he's been president. Now, that bit sounds extraordinary. He doesn't address that in this Truth Social post last night, so we don't know yet if that's still the plan.
Right. And that is where things could get a bit tricky for President Trump because Democrats are already jumping all over this. calling it corrupt. This is not the kind of look that, your working class American necessarily wants to see for their president. Now, his base has given him a lot of passes on things like this. So how well the Democrats message this and how much people are looking at it and saying, wait a minute, this does seem a little bit uncouth, to say the least, potentially illegal, depending on where this all goes.
I mean, uncouth is definitely one word for it. A $400 million gift from a foreign government. I mean, as you say, his base has given him a pass on all sorts of stuff. This appears to be beyond the pale to even many members of his most, ardent support base. I saw Laura Loomer, the very right-wing activist, tweeting that she thought this was outrageous if it was true. As I say, this bit about keeping it, to me, that still seems up in the air, and I think we'll presumably dig into more this morning once Donald Trump is up and being questioned by the press. Because if he really intends to, normally presidents don't keep gifts from foreign countries unless they're very, 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 very small in value. This will be an extraordinary thing.
And even in the immediate term, I mean, the security concerns with this, taking something that is transporting the president of the United States that's coming from a foreign government and not even necessarily someone we call, a close ally. There are just so many issues there. But like I said, it is the optics of the whole thing and how it's messaged on both sides of this that it is potentially going to be a problem for the president.
Totally. And don't forget, we're going to see Donald Trump in Qatar this week, with sort of being welcomed by all the very wealthy royal family there, walking down red carpets and all the rest of it. If there's a jumbo jet attached to this trip, then it really puts a slightly different light on the whole thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, the glitz and the glamour have a slightly different tone to them, I think.
Right. Also happening on this trip, well, sort of related to this trip anyway, we know that a deal has been done to release the last American hostage, Eden Alexander, from Gaza. Steve Witkoff, the president's envoy, is going to Israel today, and we're expecting this transfer to happen on Tuesday. This is a really big moment for Donald Trump, and he will see this as a big success. We've seen a few of these, haven't we, over the months he's been president? And,
That's right.
Getting out the last American hostage feels like a big moment.
I mean, so much about this trip to the Middle East really sets the tone, lays the groundwork for what the president wants to be, him as the leader that is making deals happen, making peace happen. So the stakes are high for President Trump because he's got a Nobel Peace Prize on his mind, right? But meanwhile, the world is on fire while he is making this trip. So this is a really big deal, and just really high stakes for everyone involved here.
And as you reminded me at the start, Netanyahu, the Israeli leader, has set this sort of deadline of getting some sort of new, like a broader agreement with Hamas before the end of Trump's trip this week, or he's planning a full-scale invasion of Gaza, and all with the scenes that we can imagine will follow from that. So, the stakes really couldn't be any higher. The thing is that it doesn't feel like Donald Trump's in negotiating mode directly at the moment. He seems to be more interested in meeting these governments to talk about American business deals rather than, frantically trying to hammer out a peace deal in Gaza.
Right. It does seem like trade is much more on his mind than like the peace part of it all. But we have a number of critical things happen, the BB deadline, plus this potential meeting between President Vladimir Zelenskyy and President Putin. I said last week that last week was kind of like a setup episode in the drama, right? That things were kind of slow, things were being put into place, nothing was blowing up, but all of the pieces that were being laid down were being prepared for the sort of potential explosion and the climax. I think we are going to see a lot of climaxes this week on a number of key issues, from Israel, Gaza to Russia, Ukraine, to these trade deals that everyone has been waiting on, plus a number of other, pressure cooker conflicts and issues that are happening around the world right now.
I have to agree, especially on Ukraine. I mean, I was watching it pan out over the weekend, and people were watching, but we had European leaders coming out Saturday saying, laying down an ultimatum to Vladimir Putin that the bombing needs to stop now, that if we're going to have talks this week, then, the ceasefire needs to continue. And it appeared from the way they were phrasing it that they had Donald Trump on side with that. Putin pushed back, and then Donald Trump pushed back and basically said, you guys just need to get together on Thursday and talk. And then we had Zelenskyy come out and said, fine, let's do it. I'll be there in person, almost daring Putin to turn up in person and negotiate with him. I don't know how Putin's going to react to that. He's not a guy that likes being forced into a corner. But if he says no, how does Donald Trump react to Putin being the one refusing to stop the bombing and refusing to meet Zelenskyy to talk?
Right. Well, Putin is the one that kind of threw meetings out there rather than the ceasefire. And the Europeans kind of thought they had Trump on side for pressuring Russia into a ceasefire before any talks. And then Trump kind of did a 180 and kind of, I think, stunned a lot of those European leaders that had gone to Kiev and really tried to rally. I think what everyone needs to remember now, especially those allies across the pond, is reliance on the U.S. to be a part of whatever they're doing, whether it's on the economy, whether it's on foreign policy. The rules are not the same. You cannot take for granted that the US is going to be a partner in this anymore. And you have seen time and again, especially with Russia, Ukraine, that President Trump tends to lean into more so what Moscow is looking for than Kiev. And that just needs to be front of mind for European leaders who I still think haven't fully settled in to a world order where the US is not their best friend on this.
Yeah, it looked like they almost thought they could bounce Trump into it, and he ended up just going the other way. But I do think, nevertheless, I don't think anyone expected Zelenskyy just to say, fine, see you on Thursday and do it in person. I mean, the idea of Putin just getting on a plane to Turkey and meeting him in person, I find that hard to believe that's going to happen.
I mean, it would be extraordinary. It would be completely extraordinary. Right. I have no idea how all of that is going to play out. And the reason I have no idea is the Trump factor too. I mean, you just don't know where he is going to land and where he's going to decide to inject himself into this.
And he, of course, is the thread tying all of these different issues we're talking about together, because Donald Trump has put his reputation on the line in so many of these things, talking about an end to the war in Gaza and turning it into some sort of Riviera, however extraordinary you might think that is, that's the sort of thing he's been talking about. He's made ending the war in Ukraine a promise from day one of his presidency. Obviously, that didn't happen. We're on day 100 and whatever, but, he's put a lot of political capital into making this happen. If it all falls apart this week, it obviously doesn't reflect well on him. And the same goes for the other things we haven't even had time to talk about today, like the GOP spending plan and so on. I just want to bring in one more thing that's happening today, though, because it is going to dominate news for at least, an hour this morning, because that's how fast the news
at least
cycle,
a few minutes.
Right, that's how fast the news cycle moves at the moment. But Trump's going to be in the Oval Office at 9 a.m. this morning, signing what he says is the biggest executive order, the most important executive order he's pretty much ever signed. I mean, he is one to say things like that, but this is basically a plan to try.
You've never seen anything like it.
Right, exactly. Basically a plan to clamp down on drug pricing in America to save money for Medicaid. Presumably, he hasn't actually specified, presumably to help save money for Medicare and Medicaid. Are you surprised to see Trump pressing ahead with this plan, what he calls his most favored nation drug pricing plan?
I'm not. And actually, our colleagues, Jake Traylor and Adam Cankren, scooped this last week. This is something that's been in the works for a while, this administration. And this is something they're touting because they're trying to show that they are not afraid to battle it out with big pharma. And that is not something that has traditionally been a Republican position. You have folks like RFK Jr., who are sort of new to this big GOP tent, who certainly are in favor of something like this. But you've got a whole lot of traditional Republicans, a lot of folks in Congress who have been cozy with the pharma industry that aren't going to be happy with this. But this is the kind of posture that they really like from President Trump in terms of the optics, especially for their base and for the working class, saying, hey, we are willing to take on industry. We are not in their pocket, and we will go to bat for you, at least optically. The question, of course, is always in the execution and how far are they willing to go, and can they get folks in Congress to buy into this too?
Absolutely. Does it need new laws? Is it going to get through court? All of that still to ask, but we'll certainly be tuning in this morning to see what happens. And also because, as you know so well, you go to some of them, these Oval Office moments are an opportunity for the press to ask President Trump about all the other stuff that's going on. So we'll hear him talk about Ukraine. We'll hear him talk about the Middle East. We'll probably hear him talk about jet planes as well. Before we go, The idea of the podcast is we're trying to end on a bit more of a fun note.
It's going to be
every
so
day.
much fun, guys.
Thank you, Dasha. I really think it will be. Today, though, the producers thought it'd be a good idea just to share a little bit about ourselves for any new listeners, because you probably don't know who we are. Dasha, why don't you tell me something that I don't know about you? Surprise me.
Okay, so, before Politico, I was at NBC News. I covered Trump on the campaign trail, and I went to many, many, many Trump rallies. And one thing that I kind of became known for, when there is a beat, I can't help but groove. And and the Trump rallies, like, listen, his playlists are legit. They are
Terrible.
eclectic. No. This is my
you
hot
like
take.
The Trump music?
Listen, he's got everything from Phantom of the Opera to Sinead O'Connor to the Stones and Zeppelin. Like, it is, some real tunes. And in between my live shots, I'd be holding the mic, and like, if you're holding a mic and you're in front of a camera and there's music, but I had to groove out. So both my fellow journalists, the folks in the control room, watching me between live shots, and Trump fans alike have gotten to see me shake my groove thing.
I love it. I'd been wondering, like, how do these TV people whose job it is to go to campaign rally after campaign rally after campaign rally, how do they keep saying that, does it get boring? Now I know this is how you do it. You spend 2 years or whatever it was on the road following Donald Trump around by loving
and he puts
tunes.
those playlists together himself. Like, he literally picks those songs. It's one of his favorite things to do. He'll go on Saturday nights at Mar-a-Lago. He likes to pull up the iPad and just hog the aux cord and play his favorite songs. So the rallies are very much reflective of that.
I should say, on a more serious note for listeners, what this actually means is that Dasha Burns is one of the most experienced journalists in town at watching Donald Trump perform. And while so many people were sort of stuck here in the swamp for the last few years, Dasha, you were on the road with him time after time. You've seen his supporters up close in every corner of the country. You've seen him up close in every corner of the country.
I've seen a lot.
You've seen a lot.
Wait, okay, hold on, Jack. I gave you my embarrassing thing you didn't know. You didn't ask for embarrassing, but I did it anyway. So I think now you have to return the favor.
The secret thing you might not know about me, okay, and this is really secret, I'm not actually American. I don't know if you knew that. I don't know if you could tell at all, but this is actually a British accent. You're hearing, I know, amazing to hear. Yeah, surprising.
Jaw on floor.
Right, yeah. And the other secret thing about me is I'm actually secretly really old. And if you look closely, you're on the webcam, you can see how much grey hair I've got if I turn my head to the side. Look, I've been covering politics in Britain for the best part of 20 years. So I've been around the block enough times on this. America is a new thing to me this year, but I've been following it from afar. But what's really interesting to me is, like, so much of it is the same. Like, you see the same characters popping up in here that you see popping up in the Westminster, the same types, you see the same plots, you see people trying to work together to the same ends. You see the same trends of populism and anger at certain issues. The similarities are extraordinary, and that's, to me, has been the most surprising thing about being in DC the past 5 or 6 months. And
you're a veteran to podcasts too, so this is another familiar pool you're jumping into here.
For my sins, I used to do a morning podcast in the UK with my friend Sam Coates from Sky News, and we used to get up super early then and tell everyone what was going on in British politics every morning. You're right. So I just can't seem to shake this
and
thing
now
off,
you're stuck with me, babe.
And now I'm stuck with you. Dasha, thank you. That was great. We better stop. We've been going on for ages. That is all we've got time for on today's Playbook podcast, but we've got loads more news and analysis in today's Playbook newsletter, which, if you haven't read it already, you can find at politico.com/playbook. And we'll be back tomorrow and for the rest of the week. Have a great Monday.
Happy Monday.